The Last Picture Show is a 1971 American coming-of-age drama film directed and co-written by Peter Bogdanovich, adapted from the semi-autobiographical 1966 novel The Last Picture Show by Larry McMurtry. The film's ensemble cast includes Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, Ellen Burstyn, Ben Johnson, Cloris Leachman, and Sybil Shepherd. Set in a small town in northern Texas from November 1951 to October 1952, it is a story of two high school seniors and longtime friends, Sonny Crawford and Dwayne Jackson. The Last Picture Show was theatrically released on October 22, 1971, by Columbia Pictures. It was a critical and commercial success, grossing $29 million on a $1.3 million budget, and was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Johnson and Bridges, and Best Supporting Actress for Burstyn and Leachman, with Johnson and Leachman winning. In 1998, the Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the United States National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Early life. Peter Bogdanovich was born in Kingston, New York, the son of Herma and Borislav Bogdanovich, a pianist and painter. His mother was of Austrian Jewish descent and his father was a Serb. Bogdanovich was fluent in Serbian, having learned it before English. He had an older brother who died in an accident in 1938, at 18 months of age, after a pot of boiling soup fell on him, though Bogdanovich did not learn about his brother until he was 7 and did not know the circumstances of his death until he was an adult. His parents both arrived in the U.S. in May 1939 on visitors' visas, along with his mother's immediate family, 3 months before the onset of World War II. In 1952, when he was 12, Bogdanovich began keeping a record of every film he saw on index cards, complete with reviews. He continued to do so until 1970. He saw up to 400 films a year. He graduated from New York City's Collegiate School in 1957 and studied acting at the Stella Adler Conservatory. Career. 1960s. In the early 1960s, Bogdanovich was known as a film programmer at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, where he programmed influential retrospectives and wrote monographs for the films of Orson Welles, John Ford, Howard Hawks, and Alfred Hitchcock. Bogdanovich also brought attention to Alan Dwan, a pioneer of American film who had fallen into obscurity by then, in a 1971 retrospective Dwan attended. He also programmed for New Yorker Theatre. Before becoming a director, he wrote for Esquire, the Saturday Evening Post, and Kayazdu Cinema as a film critic. These articles were collected in Pieces of Time. In 1966, following the example of Kayazdu Cinema critics François Truffaut, Jean-Luc Godard, Claude Chabrol, and Eric Romer, who had created the Nouvelle Vague by making their own films, Bogdanovich decided to become a director. Encouraged by director Frank Tashlin, whom he would interview in his book Who the Devil Made It, Bogdanovich headed for Los Angeles with his wife Polly Platt and in so doing, left his rent unpaid. Intent on breaking into the industry, Bogdanovich would ask publicists for movie premiere and industry party invitations. At one screening, Bogdanovich was viewing a film and director Roger Corman was sitting behind him. The two struck up a conversation when Corman mentioned he liked a cinema piece Bogdanovich wrote for Esquire. Corman offered him a directing job, which Bogdanovich accepted immediately. He worked with Corman on Targets, which starred Boris Karloff, and Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, under the pseudonym Derek Thomas. Bogdanovich later said of the Corman School of Filmmaking, "I went from getting the laundry to directing the picture in 3 weeks. Altogether, I worked 22 weeks pre-production, shooting, second unit, cutting, dubbing. I haven't learned as much since." 1970s. Returning to journalism, Bogdanovich struck up a lifelong friendship with Orson Welles while interviewing him on the set of Mike Nichols's Catch-22. Bogdanovich played a major role in elucidating Welles and his career with his writings on the actor-director, including his book This Is Orson Welles. In the early 1970s, when Welles was having financial problems, Bogdanovich let him stay at his Bel Air mansion for a couple of years. In 1970, Bogdanovich was commissioned by the American Film Institute to direct a documentary about John Ford for their tribute, directed by John Ford. The resulting film included candid interviews with John Wayne, James Stewart, and Henry Fonda, and was narrated by Orson Welles. Out of circulation for years due to licensing issues, Bogdanovich and TCM released it in 2006, re-edited it to make it faster and more incisive, with additional interviews with Clint Eastwood, Walter Hill, Harry Carey Jr., Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, and others. Much of the inspiration that led Bogdanovich to his cinematic creations came from early viewings of the film Citizen Kane. In an interview with Robert K. Elder, author of the film that changed my life, Bogdanovich explains his appreciation of Orson Welles' work. It's just not like any other movie you know. It's the first modern film, fragmented, not told straight ahead, jumping around. It anticipates everything that's being done now, and which is thought to be so modern. It's all become really decadent now, but it was certainly fresh then. The 32-year-old Bogdanovich was hailed by critics as a Welschian Wunderkind when his best-received film, The Last Picture Show, was released in 1971. The film earned 8 Academy Award nominations, including Best Director, and won 2 statues, for Cloris Leachman and Ben Johnson in the supporting acting categories. Bogdanovich co-wrote the screenplay with Larry McMurtry, and it won the 1971 BAFTA Award for Best Screenplay. Bogdanovich cast the 21-year-old model Sybil Shepherd in a major role in the film and fell in love with her, an affair leading to his divorce from Polly Platt, his longtime artistic collaborator and the mother of his 2 daughters. Bogdanovich followed up The Last Picture Show with the screwball comedy What's Up, Doc?, starring Barbra Streisand and Ryan O'Neal. Bogdanovich then formed the Directors Company with Francis Ford Coppola and William Friedkin and Co. owned by Paramount Pictures. Paramount allowed the directors to make a minimum of 12 films with a budget of $3 million each. It was through this entity that Bogdanovich's Paper Moon was produced. Paper Moon, a Depression-era comedy starring Ryan O'Neal that won his 10-year-old daughter Tatum O'Neal an Oscar as Best Supporting Actress, proved the high watermark of Bogdanovich's career. Forced to share the profits with his fellow directors, Bogdanovich became dissatisfied with the arrangement. The Directors Company subsequently produced only 2 more pictures, Coppola's The Conversation, and Bogdanovich's Sybil Shepherd starring Daisy Miller, which had a lackluster critical reception and was a disappointment at the box office. The partners of the Directors Company all went their separate ways after the production of Daisy Miller. Bogdanovich's next effort, At Long Last Love, was a musical starring Shepherd and Burt Reynolds. Both that and his next film, Nickelodeon, were critical and box office disasters, severely damaging his standing in the film community. Reflecting upon his recent career, Bogdanovich said in 1976, "I was dumb. I made a lot of mistakes." In 1975, he sued Universal for breaching a contract to produce and direct Bugsy. He then took a few years off, then returned to directing with a lower-budgeted film, Saint Jack, which was filmed in Singapore and starred Ben Gazzara in the title role. The film earned critical praise, although was not a box office hit. The making of this film marked the end of his romantic relationship with Sybil Shepherd. 1980s. Bogdanovich's next film was the romantic comedy They All Laughed, which featured Dorothy Stratton, a former model and Playboy Playmate of the Month for August 1979 and Playmate of the Year in 1980, who began a romantic relationship with Bogdanovich. Bogdanovich took over distribution of They All Laughed himself. He later blamed this for why he had to file for bankruptcy in 1985. He declared he had a monthly income of $75,000 and monthly expenses of $200,000. Stratton was murdered by her estranged husband shortly after filming completed. Following her death, Bogdanovich began writing The Killing of the Unicorn Dorothy Stratton 1960-1980, a memoir detailing the relationship between Bogdanovich and Stratton, the making of They All Laughed and Stratton's murder. Bogdanovich says he wrote the book for himself. I wanted to understand what happened to her. I felt I couldn't move forward with my life, creative or otherwise, until I did. Bogdanovich says the book was meant to be delivered to William Morrow in August 1982, but new facts kept coming to light and so it was delayed. I did more and more rewriting. In all, I suppose, I wrote the book 5 times. The book was eventually published in 1984. Teresa Carpenter's Death of a Playmate article about Dorothy Stratton's murder was published in the Village Voice and won the 1981 Pulitzer Prize, and while Bogdanovich did not criticize Carpenter's article in his book, she had lambasted both Bogdanovich and Playboy mogul Hugh Hefner, claiming that Stratton was a victim of them as much as of her husband, Paul Snider, who killed her and himself. Carpenter's article served as the basis of Bob Fosse's film Star 80. Bogdanovich opposed the production and refused to allow the film to use his name. He was portrayed as the fictional Aram Nicholas, and he threatened litigation if he found the character objectionable. Hefner retaliated by accusing Bogdanovich of seducing Stratton's younger sister Louise, shortly after the murder, when she was 13. Bogdanovich vehemently denied the accusation. On December 30, 1988, the 49-year-old Bogdanovich married 20-year-old Louise, sparking a tabloid frenzy. The couple divorced in 2001. In 1984, John Cassavetes called Bogdanovich to the set of his film Love Streams to direct a scene. Bogdanovich returned to directing officially with Mask, released in 1985 to critical acclaim. Mask was released with a song score by Bob Seger against Bogdanovich's wishes. A director's cut of the film, slightly longer and with Springsteen's songs, was belatedly released on DVD in 2004. Bogdanovich directed the comedy Illegally Yours in 1988, a film he later disowned. 1990s. In 1990, Bogdanovich adapted Larry McMurtry's novel Texasville, a sequel to The Last Picture Show, into a film. It is set 33 years after the events of The Last Picture Show, and Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd both reprised their roles as Dwayne and JC. It was a critical and box office disappointment relative to the first film. Bogdanovich often complained that the version of Texasville that was released was not the film he had intended. His cut of Texasville was later released on Laserdisc, and the theatrical cut was released on DVD by MGM in 2005. After the release of Texasville, Bogdanovich revisited The Last Picture Show and produced a modified director's cut for Criterion, which includes 7 minutes of previously unseen footage and re-edited scenes. In 1991, Bogdanovich developed an alternative calendar, titled A Year and a Day, Goddess Engagement Calendar. The calendar consisted of 13 months of 28 days and a bonus day to equal 365 days. Each month was named after a different species of tree. Bogdanovich attributed his inspiration for the calendar to the works of Robert Graves. Bogdanovich directed 2 more theatrical films in 1992 and 1993, but neither of these films recaptured the success of his early career. 1. Noises Off, based on the Michael Frayn play, while another, The Thing Called Love, is better known as one of River Phoenix's last roles before his death. In the mid-90s, Bogdanovich began to work in television, directing films such as To Sir, with Love 2. In 1997, he declared bankruptcy again. Drawing from his encyclopedic knowledge of film history, he authored several critically lauded books, including Peter Bogdanovich's Movie of the Week, which offered the lifelong cinephile's commentary on 52 of his favorite films, and Who the Devil Made It, Conversations with Legendary Film Directors and Who the Hell's in It, Conversations with Hollywood's Legendary Actors, both based on interviews with directors and actors. 2000s. In 2001, Bogdanovich resurfaced with The Cat's Meow. Returning once again to a reworking of the past, this time the alleged killing of director Thomas Ince by William Randolph Hearst. The film was a modest critical success but made little money at the box office. Bogdanovich said that he was told the story of the alleged Ince murder by Wells, who in turn said he heard it from writer Charles Lederer. In addition to directing some television work, Bogdanovich returned to acting with a recurring guest role on the cable television series The Sopranos, playing Dr. Melfi's psychotherapist, also later directing a fifth-season episode. He had a voice role, as Bart Simpson's therapist's analyst in an episode of The Simpsons, and appeared as himself in the Robots vs. Wrestlers episode of How I Met Your Mother. Quentin Tarantino cast Bogdanovich as a disc jockey in Kill Bill, Volume 1 and Kill Bill, Volume 2. Quentin knows, because he's such a movie buff, that when you hear a disc jockey's voice in my pictures, it's always me, sometimes doing different voices, said Bogdanovich. So he called me and he said, I stole your voice from the last picture show for the rough cut, but I need you to come down and do that voice again for my picture. He hosted The Essentials on Turner Classic Movies, but was replaced in May 2006 by TCM host Robert Osborne and film critic Molly Haskell. Bogdanovich hosted introductions to movies on Criterion Collection DVDs, and had a supporting role in Out of Order. In 2006, Bogdanovich joined forces with Clickstar, where he hosted a classic film channel, Peter Bogdanovich's Golden Age of Movies. Bogdanovich also wrote a blog for the site. In 2003, he appeared in the BBC documentary Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, and in 2006 he appeared in the documentary Wanderlust. The following year, Bogdanovich was presented with an award for outstanding contribution to film preservation by the International Federation of Film Archives at the Toronto International Film Festival. 2010s. In 2010, Bogdanovich joined the directing faculty at the School of Filmmaking at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. On April 17, 2010, he was awarded the Master of Cinema Award at the 12th Annual River Run International Film Festival. In 2011, he was given the Auteur Award by the International Press Academy, which is awarded to filmmakers whose singular vision and unique artistic control over the elements of production give a personal and signature style to their films. In 2012, Bogdanovich made news with an essay in The Hollywood Reporter, published in the aftermath of the Aurora, Colorado theater shooting, in which he argued against excessive violence in the movies today. There's a general numbing of the audience. There's too much murder and killing. You make people insensitive by showing it all the time. The body count in pictures is huge. It numbs the audience into thinking it's not so terrible. Back in the 70s, I asked Orson Welles what he thought was happening to pictures, and he said, "We're brutalizing the audience. We're going to end up like the Roman circus, live at the Colosseum." The respect for human life seems to be eroding. In 2014, Bogdanovich's last narrative film, She's Funny That Way, was released in theaters and on demand, followed by the documentary, The Great Buster, a celebration in 2018. In 2018, Orson Welles' long-delayed film The Other Side of the Wind, which was filmed in the 1970s and featured a prominent supporting role by Bogdanovich, who had long hoped to complete it, was released by Netflix to critical acclaim. 2020s. He collaborated with Turner Classic Movies, and TCM host Ben Mankiewicz, to create a documentary podcast about his life, which premiered in 2020. In 2020, a copy of Bogdanovich's original cut of She's Funny That Way, originally titled Squirrels to the Nuts, was found on eBay. In the wake of Bogdanovich's death in January 2022, the cut was shown at New York's Museum of Modern Art beginning on March 28, 2022. Weeks before his death in January 2022, Bogdanovich collaborated with Kim Basinger to create Lit Project 2, Flux, a first-of-its-kind short film made available on the Ethereum blockchain as a non-fungible token. The project was scheduled to be released on January 25, 2022. Death and legacy. Bogdanovich died from complications of Parkinson's disease at his home in Los Angeles on January 6, 2022, at the age of 82. Since his death, many directors, actors, and other public figures paid tribute to him, including Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Jennifer Aniston, Barbra Streisand, Cher, William Friedkin, Guillermo del Toro, James Gunn, Ellen Burstyn, Laura Dern, Joe Dante, Bryan Adams, Ben Stiller, Jeff Bridges, Michael Imperioli, Paul Feig and Viola Davis. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian described him as a loving cineast and fearless genius of cinema. The New York Times described Bogdanovich as of the Hollywood system who, with great success and frustration, worked to transform it in the same era. His work has been cited as an influence by such filmmakers as Quentin Tarantino, David Fincher, Sofia Coppola, Wes Anderson, Noah Baumbach, Edgar Wright, M. Night Shyamalan, David O. Russell, Rian Johnson, and the Safdie brothers. Unrealized projects. Bogdanovich turned down the opportunity to direct A Glimpse of Tiger, The Godfather, The Exorcist, The Way We Were, Chinatown, Rooster Cogburn, Heaven Can Wait, Hurricane and Popeye. He also turned down the role played by Dabney Coleman in Tootsie. Frequent collaborators. Cast. Crew. Cinematographer Laszlo Kovacs has worked with Bogdanovich on several of his films, those of which are Targets, the documentary directed by John Ford, What's Up, Doc, Paper Moon, At Long Last Love, Nickelodeon, and Mask. Robbie Mueller, however, shot only 2 films for Bogdanovich, Saint Jack, and They All Laughed back to back. Editors who have collaborated with Bogdanovich include Verna Fields, William C. Carruth and Richard Fields. Polly Platt, Bogdanovich's former wife, served as production designer on The Last Picture Show, What's Up, Doc? And Paper Moon. Filmography. As director. Feature films. Documentary films. Television. As actor. Film. Television. Music videos. Miscellaneous. The Wild Angels second unit director and uncredited writer and editor. Great Performances episode James Stewart, A Wonderful Life himself. Great Performances episode Bacall on Bogart himself. John Wayne Standing Tall TV movie himself. Ben Jonson, Third Cowboy on the Right documentary himself. Howard Hawks, American Artist TV movie documentary himself. Warner Brothers 75th Anniversary, No Guts, No Glory TV movie documentary himself. John Ford Goes to War documentary himself. Karloff and Me documentary himself. American Masters episode John Ford/John Wayne, the filmmaker and the legend himself. American Masters episode Hitchcock, Selznick, and the End of Hollywood. Stagecoach, A Story of Redemption video documentary himself. Commemoration, Howard Hawks Rio Bravo video short himself. Ride, Boldly Ride, The Journey to El Dorado, 7-part documentary. Dreaming the Quiet Man documentary himself. Peter Bogdanovich Stagecoach Criterion Collection Edition special feature. A Film of Firsts, Peter Bogdanovich on Red River Criterion Collection Edition Special Feature. Bibliography. 1961, The Cinema of Orson Welles. New York, Museum of Modern Art Film Library. OCLC 982198898. 1962, The Cinema of Howard Hawks. New York, Museum of Modern Art Film Library. OCLC 868410545. 1963, The Cinema of Alfred Hitchcock. New York, Museum of Modern Art Film Library. OCLC 937577000. 1967, John Ford. London, Studio Vista. OCLC 868409009. Expanded edition, Berkeley, University of California, 1978. ISBN 9780520034983. 1967, Fritz Lang in America. London, Studio Vista. OCLC 469498600, New York, Praeger. OCLC 8411846000. 1970, Alan Dwan, The Last Pioneer. Inglaterra, Studio Vista. OCLC 7777666501. 1973, Pieces of Time. New York, Arbor House. OCLC 982199356. Expanded edition, 1985, Pieces of Time, Peter Bogdanovich on the Movies, 1961–1985. ISBN 9780877956969. 1984, The Killing of the Unicorn Dorothy Stratton 1960–1980. William Morrow and Company. ISBN 0-688-01611-1. 1991, A Year and a Day Engagement Calendar 1992, a desk diary adapted from the works of Robert Graves. New York, Overlook Books. ISBN 978-0879514297. 1992, This is Orson Welles. Harper Perennial. ISBN 0-06-092439-X. 1995, A Moment with Miss Gish. Santa Barbara, Santa Teresa Press. OCLC 343161885. 1997, Who the Devil Made It. New York, Alfred A. Knopf. ISBN 0-679-44706-7. 1999, Peter Bogdanovich's Movie of the Week. New York, Ballantine Books. ISBN 9780345432056. 2004, Who the Hell's in It? Conversations with Hollywood's Legendary Actors. New York, Alfred A. Knopf. ISBN 0-375-40010-9.